the palace that was never meant to be seen. It does not appear on maps. It does not host ceremonies. And yet, it may be the most powerful building ever constructed. In an age where wealth is broadcast instantly, some fortunes choose invisibility, because true power no longer needs to be seen to be felt. And nowhere is that philosophy more perfected than among the modern sheiks. To understand why a palace would be built to disappear, we need to step back. Long before glass towers and luxury brands, wealth was survival. Control over land meant control over life itself. And rulers learned early that visibility invited enemies. As empires expanded, palaces became statements. Gold ceilings, endless halls. Public splendor meant unquestioned authority. But history has a pattern. Every time wealth became too visible, it became a target. Today, the world watches a gulf through curated images. Supercars, private islands, record-breaking towers. But beneath that spectacle exists a parallel philosophy. One where the most important assets are never photographed. This palace was not designed to impress guests. It was designed to disappear from them. No grand entrances, no public records, no viral images. Its value lies not in beauty, but in function. At first glance, this seems contradictory. Why would extreme wealth choose restraint? Why build something magnificent, only to hide it? The answer lies in a quiet shift happening globally. Wealth no longer competes for attention. It competes for insulation. As scrutiny grows, so does the cost of exposure. Attention invites influence. Influence invites interference. And interference threatens autonomy. This palace exists as a response. A structure built not for admiration, but for control. A place where decisions are made without observers, where silence becomes leverage. What began as architecture slowly evolved into strategy. Walls became filters. Distance became protection. And invisibility became the most expensive luxury of all. But this palace was only the beginning. Because once discretion becomes power, everything else must follow. The decision to hide was not accidental. It was calculated, deliberate, and shaped by decades of observation. As global wealth became digitized, power became traceable. Satellite imagery, financial disclosures, social media exposure. Every asset left a footprint. Every movement created data. For most, visibility meant relevance. For sheiks, it meant vulnerability. Early on, advisors noticed a pattern. The more public a location became, the more pressure followed. Journalists arrived. Foreign interests followed. And negotiations became performances instead of conversations. So priorities shifted, not towards smaller ambitions, but quieter ones. Instead of landmarks, networks were built. Instead of monuments, systems. Instead of attention, access. The palace reflected that evolution. Its location chosen for obscurity, not prestige. Its design optimized for privacy, not scale. Every angle calculated to avoid aerial visibility. Materials were selected for silence. Sound absorption replaced decoration. Natural barriers replaced walls. What could not be seen could not be measured. Inside, the architecture told a different story. Not excess, but efficiency. Not display, but dominance through clarity. Rooms were designed for decisions, not gatherings. Spaces prioritized information flow, not ceremony. Power was no longer theatrical. It was operational. At first, even allies misunderstood the shift. Some saw it as retreat. Others mistook it for paranoia. But the sheiks understood something deeper. In a world obsessed with optics, control belongs to the unseen. Negotiations happen faster without cameras. Influence travels further without attribution. Privacy stopped being defensive. It became offensive. By limiting exposure, leverage increased. By staying invisible, unpredictability grew. And unpredictability created advantage. The palace became a nerve center. Not a home, but a command environment where diplomacy, finance, and strategy converged quietly. And while the world focused on skyscrapers and supercars, real power consolidated elsewhere. However, this invisibility came with a cost, because the more something disappears, the more myths begin to form around it. And myths attract curiosity. That curiosity would soon test the limits of silence. As whispers replaced photographs, curiosity intensified, and curiosity is never neutral. It either fades or it turns into pressure. Intelligence agencies notice anomalies, blank zones where activity should exist, unusual patterns in flight paths, meetings that left no trace. At first, these details seemed insignificant, but when mapped together, they told a different story. Something important was happening somewhere unseen. The absence became louder than presence. Foreign governments grew uneasy, because power that cannot be located cannot be negotiated with directly, and influence without visibility cannot be countered easily. This palace disrupted an unspoken rule, that power must announce itself to be acknowledged. Instead, it moved silently, efficiently, without permission. Inside, decisions accelerated. Without press cycles, agreements formed faster. Without public narratives, leverage remained fluid. Silence removed friction, but silence also removed accountability. As influence expanded, so did concern. Questions emerged without answers. Who was present? What was decided? Who benefited? The palace had become more than architecture. It was a symbol of a new imbalance. Even within elite circles, tension surfaced. Some advisors warned of overreach. They understood that invisibility protects, but also isolates. Power without visibility risks misunderstanding. Then came the moment nobody expected. A single deviation, one logistical error that created a ripple. A flight logged incorrectly. A shipment registered under the wrong entity. A signal, faint but detectable. For the first time, silence cracked. Analysts began connecting fragments. Not enough to reveal the palace, but enough to confirm its existence. That confirmation changed everything. Because once something unseen is proven real, every actor recalibrates. Allies became cautious. Rivals became attentive. Neutral parties became curious. The palace was still invisible, but it was no longer unknown. And in that shift, pressure returned. The same force invisibility was meant to escape was now knocking quietly at the door. The sheiks faced a paradox. Reveal nothing and invite speculation. Reveal something and lose advantage. The strategy that created dominance now demanded its ultimate test. What mattered next was not architecture, not location, not secrecy. It was choice. And that choice would redefine what power meant. In a world that refuses to stop watching, the climax did not arrive with exposure. It arrived with restraint. Faced with growing attention, the sheiks did not react publicly. There were no statements, no denials, no corrections. Instead, operations slowed deliberately. Meetings dispersed across locations. Decision-making fractured into smaller, quieter nodes. The palace did not disappear. It became less necessary. That was the final lesson. True power was never the building. It was the ability to withdraw without consequence, to remain influential even when the center dissolved. The world expected a reveal. What it received was absence, and absence created confusion. Markets speculated. Governments hesitated. Media narratives collapsed without substance. Because when power refuses to confirm itself, every assumption weakens. The palace had served its purpose, not as a permanent structure, but as a temporary advantage. It proved something unsettling, that modern power no longer needs permanence, only timing. Luxury, once defined by display, had completed its evolution. It became optional. The most expensive asset was no longer property. It was flexibility, to act without notice, to decide without reaction, to exit without resistance. That is the luxury few ever reach, and fewer still understand. What this story reveals is not secrecy, it is adaptation. In a world obsessed with visibility, those who master invisibility reshape outcomes quietly. This is why these stories matter today, because power is no longer announced, it is inferred, and those who mistake silence for weakness often realize too late that nothing was ever missing. It was simply out of sight. The